Tonight and again tomorrow night, we'll be taking a look at the challenges a President Clinton or a President Trump will face once they take office.
We do so with the help of Creighton University economist Dr. Ernie Goss, who has been studying the Midwest economy for more than 30 years.
Dr. Goss is the driving force behind the Mid-American Business Conditions Index, which has been tracking economic activity on a monthly basis in these 9 states, including South Dakota, since 1994.
Tonight we are looking at what kind of economy the next president of the United States will be inheriting once they take office. In a typical presidential election, the economy is one of the top concerns for the candidates.
You haven't heard much about economics. This has been a sort of a personality-driven presidential race.
The lack of economic discussion bothers Dr. Ernie Goss, who monitors the economy from his office on the campus of Creighton University, just a stone's throw from downtown Omaha, Nebraska.
And we're limping along. The national economy is limping along at 1 to 1.5 to 2% growth. It should be double that or even triple that.
Goss says the U.S. economy, now in its 7th year of recovery since the Great Recession, is limping along at best and at worst is slowly slipping back into recession. He says the farm sector of the Midwest economy is already in trouble.
There are parts of our economy right now that are in a recession. That would be agriculture and those industries related to it. You got North Dakota, which has been losing jobs almost every month for over a year now.
Those North Dakota job losses are due to continuing low oil prices, which are great for consumers at the pump, but means oil companies are making less money and having to cut jobs to make up the loss. That is the continual balancing act of the U.S. economy. What is good for some is bad for others.
And as the old Chinese proverb says, may you live in interesting times. These are the most interesting times ever.
So why is the U.S. economy simply surviving and not thriving? Goss says there are several things you can point to as the problem.
If you look at where our economy is suffering, it's not on the consumption side, it's on the investment side, the business investment, and it's on exports.
One investment problem involves businesses, both big and small, and the type of employee they are hiring. Over the last 7 years, businesses have been making more of an investment in part-time employees and reducing their full-time workforce. Why?
Affordable Care Act says if you go over 29 hours, 30 and above, you have to provide health insurance if you're a company of 50 or more employees.
Going the part-time route is saving businesses money on health care, but hurting wages and opportunities for workers. In response, more and more workers are calling for an increase in the minimum wage. But that can also create the exact same problem of businesses hiring fewer employees, making jobs scarce, and increasing unemployment, while making the minimum wage an economic development bargaining tool.
These decision makers need to understand that setting a minimum wage, if we just got the minimum wage and no job impacts or no business impacts, hey, I'm all for that.
Another problem right now is the nation's current economic policy when it comes to the deficit. Now, the U.S. spends $503 billion more than it makes. To make up that amount, the U.S. borrows money, largely from China, which is facing its own economic problems. Goss says, should China slide into a recession, it would take us with it. Piled on top of that, continued funding of federal entitlement programs.
We want to expand Medicare, expand Medicaid, expand Social Security. Somebody's got to pay for it.
But what may worry Goss most of all is the phrase too big to fail in reference to banks who were bailed out in 2009 so as to not worsen the recession. Goss says those banks are now even bigger, and the federal oversight of those banks is in question after the discovery of Wells Fargo creating fake bank accounts to give the appearance of success. It wasn't the feds who figured out that was happening.
Well, who discovered this, what Wells Fargo did? The Los Angeles Times, a reporter, not the regulators. The regulators were asleep at the wheel again.
So according to Dr. Goss, all of this is what the next president faces. So what should that person do next? We'll talk about that tomorrow night on KSFY News at 10.